Are we ready to go?
Yep, let's get started.
So thanks for joining us. My name is Jakub Zavrel. I'm the founder of Zeta Alpha, and we're here a live session of Trends in AI for October 24. Good morning, everybody who's watching out from California and the Bay Area, and good afternoon for everybody over in Europe. And with me is Dinos.
Hi everyone, I'm Dinos. I'm an AI researcher at Zeta Alpha and your usual host here at the webinar. So yeah, this is the October 2024 edition. We have quite a lot of stuff.
The Oktoberfest. So we have, as usual, a complete abundance, pardon the pun, of AI with lots of drama, gossip, news, new models, and startup and business news, regulation, and hardware news, as well as the 10 um, hottest paper of the month.
And we'll try to fit everything in an hour. So let's see how we do that.
Let's speed up. All right. So we are two humble podcast hosts, and I feel like we're being replaced by AI. What do you think, Dinos?
Yeah, I kind of feel like a species that we're going to be extinct in a few months, years. Everyone is talking about AI podcasts from Google's latest product or preview product called NotebookLM.
Missing the
Um,
human touch, missing the human touch.
It really is. Yeah. So what this early preview does basically is it allows you to connect to multiple sources like YouTube videos, documents, things from your drive. You can write stuff. You can point it to websites, and then it does many other things. Like you can ask it for questions and do your regular RAG and LLM stuff. But the killer feature that most people are talking about is actually an audio guide or audio preview of what is in all the sources. So what this generates is this two-person podcast that is a guy and a girl, and they're talking about whatever they want to talk about from the sources. You can't really steer that yet. So it's kind of whatever they pick up on, they will cover, but they always do it in a very fascinating way. It has a feeling that someone is actually expressing their thoughts and the common stereotypes of phrases and tone and intonation that you use in podcasts. I find
I
it really
tried to do a
fascinating.
few research papers, so it's quite good actually. So Google's NotebookLM, not entirely new product, but going viral at the moment. Check it out. Of course, the majority of the news for this month, I think, was about OpenAI. So just this week, OpenAI closed their big funding round. It was really a mega round of $6.6 billion in new cash. Um, SoftBank, for example, participated for half a million, uh,
Half a billion.
uh, half a billion, sorry, half a billion. Apple declined to participate at the last moment. Um, and yeah, it's really a coup for Sam Altman in keeping the company going forward.
Yeah, I was seeing tweets floating around because of Apple pulling out, oh, is OpenAI going to bankruptcy? And I think a few hours later, we get this newsroom article. Oh, no, it's not going anywhere. We have even more money. And yeah, they're also having kind of a chat with their investors on how to spend this money on other competitors. I saw, I don't know if this was confirmed or not, but they said, yeah, please don't spend money on our competitors like Anthropic or Ilia's new venture, which I found really kind of unprecedented, at least.
Yeah. And well, I think they have good use for the money because at the moment they're still losing 5 billion per year reportedly, but growing their revenue very fast. Um, so there was also rumors around this financing round that the new investors demand that or support Sam Altman maybe to change the incorporation rules of OpenAI from non-profit control to a normal for-profit corporation. And there were also rumors that Sam Altman would get quite some paycheck in equity. I think 7% was rumored, but this was not confirmed. And of course, where big paychecks fly around, there's also a fair amount of drama. Well, there was drama at OpenAI even before. The exodus, you could say, of OpenAI executives is continuing with three more big names leaving the arena just before the investment round was announced. So CTO Mira Murati and um, VP of Research Barrett Zopf and Chief Research Officer Bob McGrew almost simultaneously announced that they were leaving OpenAI. What's your speculation, Dinos?
Yeah, I think you said it all. It was, I think, a few days just before this announcement of this fundraising and also the dev event that they hosted yesterday or a few days ago. It was all very suspiciously lined up. So I think there were some disagreements on how where the company is going. Maybe some people are more into product, more into research. I'm kind of seeing both from current OpenAI employees claiming that yes, we're building the product more than ever, but we're also doing research more than ever. So I can really put myself in either of the two camps.
Well, OpenAI would be nothing
Well,
uh,
it's people, right?
except for its people, was the famous quote there, right? So there was a new big tweet that went viral from Wojciech Zaremba, where he's kind of harping on this departure and expressing his sadness about them leaving. Um, in the meantime, evocating all kinds of bizarre imagery about medieval plagues and uh, office parties in jacuzzis. So the Anthropic folks took a nice swipe at that. Happy to report that Anthropic's co-founders are still merrily working at the company. None have been lost to middle-aged plagues or jacuzzis.
I'm curious if that first message was written in part from GPT-4, 5, or some other model specializing in this kind of terminology or analogies.
Meanwhile, we kind of skipped over that. There was the OpenAI Dev Day, where they announced a whole bunch of, I would say, incremental improvements to the product. We're almost at the end of the year. Well, we're heading towards the last stretch of the year, and GPT-5 is still missing in action.
Yeah, and also interestingly enough, I think it was the first time they do an event where it was only in person. They recorded it, but nothing was live streamed. So we kind of had to rely on people that visited to know what happened there. Of course, they published some blog posts afterwards, and it seems that most of their focus is on creating their developer platform to be this one-stop shop for everything you want to do with their models, including evaluation, fine-tuning, distilling, prompt caching, everything basically that libraries typically do or tools, open source tools do. OpenAI is seemingly trying to get a grab on the developers and the whole environment.
Yeah, they're eating a little bit into the LLM ops startups space there. Interestingly, they announced one of the most attention-grabbing changes in the product, the GPT Canvas, 2 days after the developer day. Wasn't ready, I don't know. It's a pretty cool thing. It's actually kind of reminiscent of what Anthropic does with the artifacts, right?
Yeah, yeah, they have this code equivalent that Anthropic has, but I also really like this UI for collaboration on more than just code. Also, like creating a blog post, editing, suggesting things to the LLM. Basically, they're thinking quite far ahead from a UI UX perspective on how to collaborate with these LLMs. Maybe it's no longer the era of just a chat text input.
Maybe GPT-5 will not come this. Um, who knows? Anthropic, by the way, is also chugging ahead with a rumored founding round of themselves. Um, And some breaking news this week. The I think big star of the Dutch AI um, foundations, Dirk Kingma, inventor of the Atom Optimizer and the variational autoencoder, together with Max Welling, um, left Google DeepMind and it's not going to OpenAI, it's going to Anthropic.
I'm curious if that means anything in terms of direction of research, or if they just line up forces to make something even better.
Well, it's certainly good to have somebody like Dirk Kingma on your side. By the way, he was also one of the founding engineers at OpenAI, and he reportedly continues to work from the Netherlands, but occasionally dropping into the Anthropic office in San Francisco. In other California news, there was an enormous amount of ruckus around the AI risk bill, SB 1047, which has had passed various branches of the California legislature, but in the final round was struck down. California Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed the bill, writing a letter to his constituents about his reasoning, and he just said, "Well, this extreme AI risk stuff, I just cannot regulate everything, and this has a potential risk." And I think he was put under a lot of pressure from all kinds of more open source oriented AI folks, including Meta and others, that this bill would kind of be really bad for open source and innovation in research. So that one didn't make it, but in fact, 18 other AI laws got signed into being, um, regulating all kinds of more practical aspects like deep fakes, election interference using AI, the provenance of training data. So pretty soon in California, AI companies will have to write a model card which includes the entire bill of logistics for where they got the data.
Well, I'm looking forward for that. Seems like some European influence from the AI Act, right?
Definitely, yeah, and I think it's a good thing, and but it's going to be challenging. You remember Mira Murati from OpenAI when she was asked about whether they had consumed YouTube videos, how that looked. All right, so from the European side of this whole AI regulation, you found this court case in the German court. What's that about?
Right. So LAION apparently won a copyright infringement lawsuit thanks to some loophole or regulation from the German law. Basically, the case was about a photographer that found some of his artifacts, some of his published photos in the well-known data set that LAION has with the billion images from the web. But the German court decided that this falls still under a regulation that exists about scraping web data. So that's really well protected in Germany. So LAION won this one, and I think it's going to be kind of a sigh of relief for many of the companies that just do this massive web scraping. Of course, this was in Germany, so it's not going to apply to everywhere, but I think it's still encouraging and to folks that do this kind of stuff. And probably, obviously, this has a lot of building the momentum on how these models develop. I think we wouldn't have had this progress, at least in open source, that we've had without such data sets.
Yeah, it's interesting that actually European copyright has these particular exemptions for collecting web data and making technical copies of it for indexing or for text mining purposes. And I think that was referenced in this court case.
Yeah, and apparently that extends also to AI, training AI systems. So good for us.
So, leaving the drama and the legal issues aside, I think the word of the month or the season is agents. right? Is totally the hype. Um, Salesforce kind of bet the company on their new approach, launching at the Dreamforce event their Agent Force approach, where they're actually putting a completely new business model for software sales, kind of pay software by the transaction, much closer to the API call based model. Because obviously, if you're going to automate away your customer sales calls, you don't want to be paying by the number of um, customer sales reps. And of course, also Salesforce companies Slack betting big on agent integration in pivoting to support Salesforce agents within the Slack platform, and also become a kind of, as they call it, operating system of everyday work.
I think this
And
makes a lot of sense, right? We're seeing this in more and more platforms, definitely from the Meta associated ones like WhatsApp, where they're adding their Meta AI stuff. But I think we're going to be seeing more of that, like in Microsoft, in Slack, in Discord, most likely. I think we should be expecting that agents start up popping everywhere, hopefully helping us and not distracting us.
yeah, I have here on this slide Multion, a very buzzy agent startup from San Francisco. But there's actually, I think, more than 150 agent startups just in the Bay Area. And it's like mushroom season. Also, Microsoft, of course, betting big on their Copilot with a new iteration of that. And interestingly, I heard Satya Nadella of Microsoft say that he thinks that now sort of the pure foundational models, the raw intelligence of the large models has kind of been commoditized, and the next game is going to be played in the application arena. So Microsoft is betting big on that, on the software side, but also on the hardware side. Um, I think one of the largest investments that has been rumored, apart from um, Sam Altman looking for his 7 trillion investment fund, is the BlackRock and Microsoft initiative to build $100 billion worth of data centers for AI workloads.
In the
And
US.
I think it's global. I think I'm not sure what falls exactly under this initiative, but there was I think a 4.5 million euro investment announced for Italy around this. I think it's going to be very global. This Equinix, this other snippet here about Equinix, that's unrelated, I think, or partially, and that's another 15 billions to build AI infrastructure. And of course, all of those data centers are going to have to be powered, and these guys would hate it if they would be blamed for um, reversing the carbon balance of the planet. So they're actually betting on nuclear energy. So there is a lot of speculation about new nuclear energy reactors being brought online, and even very old nuclear reactors, like the almost archaeological 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor, being brought back online for this purpose.
I'm sure if this goes anywhere, we'll be going to be covering it in the coming episodes with all the drama and regulation that's going to be associated. It's not going to go quietly.
So usually in the hardware section, all of that money ends up going to NVIDIA, um, which I'm sure it will continue to do to some extent, but there are challengers. And Cerebras is making bigger and bigger waves. We recently covered their inference service, which set record-breaking speeds on their unique blend of silicon with large wafers. And now they're looking to step up their game with an IPO. So they're preparing for a to go to the stock market and raise up to $1 billion to fund their further growth. Of course, when you file for an IPO, you also have to disclose some information to the investors. So there was some solid numbers on their revenue, but only from like 23 from last year, which was around $70 million, largely dependent on building supercomputers for the Gulf states in the Middle East. And what's this ByteDance plan?
Well, as we covered before, the situation in China is a bit more restricted with regards to access to NVIDIA chips, or most US-based companies that provide hardware. So what they did, I think, was pretty smart. We have been tracking Huawei chips for a while now, and they're definitely putting their mark in the at least research field. But ByteDance is a huge corporation. They also train a lot of models. I think we might have a model or a paper from them in this episode. But specifically now, what they're doing is they plan to train a new AI model exclusively on this chips provided by Huawei.
Yeah, I think they're planning to build a computer with a few 10,000s of them, the Huawei Ascent chips, but there seem to be some delivery problems. I saw some rumors about that, so we'll see whether this actually materializes. So in other funding news or startup news, we have some interesting snippets of news. In in the European section, well, Mistral is loaded with cash from previous financing rounds, and interestingly, they launched this kind of free layer of their API service. So now everybody can get access to the Mistral models, and at small scale and for kind of development use. It's free. Also in Europe, the new challenger in the image generation space, Black Forest Labs, is raising $100 million to further develop their product. They have launched some pretty cool features recently, including Flux 1.1 Turbo, which is a pretty nice image generation model without filters, as they say.
Right. I think this dropped yesterday, right? We didn't have time to add much content on this, but from what I saw in the blog post, it was pretty good model on some domains, even beating DALI and other Midjourney and other models, at least in the cost and performance factor.
Yeah. So other big tickets are 5A Lease, kind of foundational world models startup with 230 millions in seed funding, no products yet. And then the AI coding startup Poolside raised $500 million. And UJet, a customer support startup, raised 76 million. There's more money coming to the table with Salesforce expanding their war chest to do further investments in AI startups. And there's a small AI startup, which is not that old yet, which is actually moving into OpenAI's former offices. It's called Elon Musk's XAI. Oh, they're pretty big already. They raised 6 billion. So, of course, the motivation for XAI was kind of the disillusionment of Elon Musk with OpenAI's strategy and direction. And it's interesting that he's going to play out that game in the place where they had these jacuzzi parties, I think, maybe.
Well, I remember Elon being very vocal against OpenAI's pace of development. asking to pause AI and whatnot. But I think XAI is probably now the fastest growing and fastest developing organization up there in the big league.
Yeah, he really is pretty confident that he can be one of the four remaining vendors of this technology, and has a new headquarters in the Mission District. Um, And last but not least, there's a new startup that is on our radar. Leta is the researchers from Berkeley who are building this new sort of LLM-based operating system based of their work on MemGPT. So a combination of agents, memory, and large language models, and they have launched with only 10 million, but it's a very has a lot of traction, their open source package. So we're moving to model releases. So let's dive into it. This was a pretty big one, QN from that's from Alibaba, right?
Yeah, correct. And big in many senses. They have a big model, like most providers now do in the 70 billion range. But the family, as they call it, of Qwen 2.5 is also big because they released a whole lot of models in domains like specific for math or coding, but also in sizes ranging from a few 100 million parameters all the way to 72, like I mentioned before. Um, Most of these models are actually open source and commercially available to use. Some of them are not, either some kind of research license or only hosted by their API to kind of maintain this competitive advantage. But even the open source ones that they released, they're performing quite well. So they're not shying away, and we see them comparing on all popular benchmarks like MLU, the multimodal ones, math, all reasoning, encoding benchmarks that we are used to. And they're stacking up there with Llama or even Mixtral and the other open source models. So definitely, I've seen a lot of use from the community as well because, yeah, Qwen has turned out to be one of those providers that people just love to get the new models and play around. There was also this COLM model that I think was based on the second generation, so not 2.5, but you can see how this adoption quickly spreads in the community of open source.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you're building anything on top of sort of the latest and greatest um, open source models, it makes sense to try out ones that are coming out and that have really strong benchmark result. Because if you start at a higher level with the pre-trained model, you probably can squeeze out a few more percentage points on your downstream tasks as well. So what's this one? Green mixture of experts?
Right. So this is a model from Microsoft, which is also open source. And they also have a very detailed technical report. So I definitely suggest everyone that's interested in how to build and train these large models, both in terms of architecture, but also the tricks required to do it. It's a really nice paper, technical report. It performs really well. So again, as you can see on the figure on the left, this is a chart comparing accuracy or performance on MMLU and the active parameters. So this green MOE, if I remember correctly, it has a total of 12 experts in total, but it only activates 2 of them. So that brings it to the scale of the 6 to 7 billion parameters that these small or more affordable, efficient models can use. And it seems to be state of the art in that. So it's surpassing even the fee mixture of experts model that Microsoft had previously released. And what's cool and unique about this model is how they do the routing. So without going into too much detail, basically they have a new module that basically predicts which experts should handle a token instead of just having a gating mechanism that mixture of experts traditionally uses. And they say that this is a big part in how they perform so well. So in this other table in the paper, they even compared it against models like GPT 3.5, 4.0, and Gemini Flash. And we see them trading blows. Obviously, it's not going to be better than 4.0, but for an open source model, which I think is also commercially available, is ranking quite highly there.
Right, so check out Green Mixture of Experts. And there's this kind of other in the other category, in the non-transformer category, um, pretty big buzz around the liquid models. So these seem to be um, state space models from liquid. Actually, there's not that much known on their exact architectural properties because this paper is 2 years old. But they seem to be capitalizing on this a more memory and an efficient and fast way of predicting tokens.
Right. So I also went into their blog post, and in comparison to their older publications, like the paper you just pulled, this blog post was more marketing and more we're starting to be seriously considered as a company. So in the blog post, from what I could understand, is it's basically this state space model modification along with these liquid models, which kind of adapt on the fly to the input to process it more efficiently in each modality. So there's a lot of talk in the blog post about this, what they call featureizers, which process each modality according to how complex it is. So they're saying audio is not that difficult to process, while, for example, images, you need to do a lot more stuff to bring it to a state where the state space model can understand and use.
Yeah, but
Cool
this is
stuff.
language model. But we also have many multimodal models being released. So let's dive into those.
Yeah, and obviously we couldn't not mention Llama 3.2, which made quite a buzz last week. It's a very strong model. They also have a bunch of model sizes, so they call them both applicable on the edge with 1 and 3 billion. But then they also scale to the typical
Right.
70 and 80.
The first vision language model in the Llama series, right?
It is, yes. And it performs quite well. So, I mean, if I was able to use it, I would probably try it out. But unfortunately, they had some ace, not so nice ace up their sleeve for us Europeans. And that's no another reason than simply us not being able to use it, or at least legally use it in the European Union.
Roll out your VPNs to use your VLMs. All right. And Momo, that's a much even more open model, right, than Llama.
That is
Because
an open model, and fortunately, we can use this one.
yeah, also the data set used to build this one, and all the training and inference code is available from LNAI, right?
Correct. Yes. And it's also a very strong model. Suspiciously dropped the day after Llama 3.2. But yeah, it's good to have diversity. And, sometimes models perform well on benchmarks, but people need to get their hands on them, on the models, and see which one does better in their tasks.
Yeah, so Llama is open, but not like open by the book, but Momo definitely is open by all meaningful standards. Um, and I think this is the last one in this series for this month, the NVIDIA one, right?
Correct. Yes. So they call this one NVLM, and I'm slowly seeing NVIDIA kind of branch out into every type of model there is. We have NVEmbed, NVLM. They have all these Nemo and all the kind of libraries to make use of all those GPUs that they're probably swimming in. What's interesting about this model, I would say, is that it's not just the decoder only. They also have they made some modifications in how they mix the modalities. So it's not just putting all the image tokens, all the text tokens, but they also have this cross attention variant or interleaving, intertwining options, which seems to work really strongly as well.
Yeah, I wonder whether NVIDIA is putting these things out kind of more to show their capabilities, to get other people give them a bigger appetite for GPUs, or whether they're actually going to move into the space of competing with their own customers. Should be
Great
interesting.
question. Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't stop at images. Also, in the space of video models, things are moving really fast. And here you see a little depiction of the OpenAI drama playing out.
Yeah,
Um,
so this was Kling. We also have Pika 1.5. They have been quite quiet for a while. And also we have a featuring a model from Meta that dropped, I think, 2 hours ago. So this was the latest addition to the content. Really interesting stuff. I mean, this quality probably was not even thinkable a year ago. And this is looking really interesting. I think this Meta one also generates audio for the videos, which is quite new.
Yeah. So this Pika model has all these surrealistic effects that you can add on top of existing imagery. I would be curious to see the OpenAI drama being surrealistically pictured in Pika 1.5. So moving to embedding models, we have a nice release from Voyage 3. It's a somewhat smaller model, so it doesn't entirely, let's say, top the leaderboards because they are occupied by large models. What do you find interesting about this one?
I mean, they present this as kind of the generalist, right? They have collected kind of their own benchmark because MTEB or peer is not really that diverse anymore. It's kind of frozen data sets, but here they show some strong numbers on finance, law, and some other categories where probably their clients are very interested in. But I think it's a nice model. Unfortunately, not open at all, so it's not really clear what went into it. I think it's probably one of the closest models that there are out there.
And Voyage also announced a new financing round, so congratulations with that. Um, Gina from Europe has released also their version 3 model.
Right.
Um,
This one is a bit more open. Still, they don't disclose that much into their data or a lot of the training tricks. But the technical report had this really insightful piece on, which I think is quite novel. They're trying to decouple the retrieval tasks that we see in MTEB
yeah,
into different LoRa, basically adapters that get enabled based on the task.
based on the retrieval task or the domain even.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and it seems to be performing quite well. So in this other graph, we have it topping OpenAI and if multilingual E5 large, because I think this is also at that size, I think XLM large based.
Yeah. And well, Anthropic does not have their embedding models, but they're kind of made some splash in the information retrieval space with this announcement. What is contextual retrieval preprocessing?
Well, they're kind of finding new ways where you can use LLMs even more for retrieval. So it's a pre-processing step where they're taking chunks from a corpus, from the document in the corpus, and then they kind of add more metadata or information about that chunk. So the embedding model has more to go off of to create the embedding.
Right.
And then, I mean, they show this kind of classical story in IR where you do this, you add hybrid, you add a ranker, you add all these tricks, and this is also an important step to bring down the error rate even more.
Yeah. I wonder about the cost though, because classically embedding models are a lot cheaper to buy per million tokens than generative models. But this is essentially putting a generative model to work on your entire document collection, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it makes sense for them to push for it.
Yeah. And well, performance-wise, like relevance-wise, it does indeed deliver some quality improvements. So that brings us to the events section, where right now, as we're speaking, in Milan, the European Conference on Computer Vision is wrapping up. So a cool 2,400 papers were presented there in the computer vision, but also more and more in multimodal and video and all these kind of adjacent areas. Soon in Zeta Alpha. And next week in the San Francisco Bay Area, the Tech Week, San Francisco part of the Tech Week, organized by Andreessen Horowitz, is bursting loose, really. It's now that's really the Oktoberfest. And I think you should head to Munich for Oktoberfest. First of all, it's almost over because Oktoberfest in Munich is in September. But this is the real AI and tech bonanza. Um, I think that there are more than 1,000 events planned in the course of this week, ranging from drinks and mixers to really meaningful product announcements and big name uh, um, meetups. Uh, I think this is a little bit out of date, but I counted the number of AI events per day on Cerebral Valley, and it's kind of at least triple or quadruple of what it is normally on a weekday. A couple ones that we want to shout out is Nathan Benaik and Air Street Capital launching their famous State of AI report on October 10th in San Francisco with a in-person event. Wish we could be there. Um, OpenAI has their big Tech Week reception on Tuesday. Uh, Anthropic has a breakthroughs in AI research salon, so I assume that they will at least present some breakthroughs. Otherwise, it's not worth the title. So that's on Thursday. And on Wednesday, we have Google DeepMind's reception. I don't expect product announcements there, but it should be pretty cool showcase of their entire current product offering. And what I would really like to go to is Neuralink's presentation. That's also on Tuesday, where they're going to be talking about the state of their brain-computer interface. And one less high name event organized by Mother Duck and a couple of other more structured AI startups is harnessing AI for relational data. That's also on Thursday. So lots of stuff to do in San Francisco Tech Week. Also next week in Philadelphia is the conference on language modeling. So I think this is the indication that the language modeling community is slowly starting to peel off from the more general natural language processing community, because they have founded their own conference. I think this is the first edition. And if you scan this QR code, you can access all the papers. It's around 300 papers on language models discoverable in the Zeta Alpha platform. A couple of highlights are the keynotes.
What is this one? The first one?
Christopher Manning is going to talk about something. I don't know. I don't, I've not seen it yet. That a keynote is without title and without content, but Chris Manning is a pretty knowledgeable guy in this space, so I'm sure he'll present something that's both fun and very interesting. And our own Amsterdam star Raquel Fernandez is presenting one of the keynotes on how multimodal conversational grounding is working in the era of large language models, and another third keynote by Evelina Fedorenko of MIT about LLMs as models of language processing in the human brain. And 300 pretty high quality papers. So check it out. And talking about Amsterdam, that's still also next week. The World AI Summit, one pretty big event for the European AI space, around 6,000 people gathering there with a closing keynote by Thomas Wolf from Hugging Face. So I would like to see that.
Yeah, a lot of interesting talks I saw the schedule. Look nice.
So short commercial break, but I'll keep it very short because we still need to cover the top 10 research papers. So with Zeta Alpha, we of course discover and organize AI research for you in this webinar, but also in our platform, and you can do it yourself. So sign up for access to all the latest AI research papers and news on zetaalpha.com. And we use that tool, of course, to prepare this webinar, but also once a year, um, we collect all these statistics of citations, and we compile this report on the top 100 most cited papers in AI. And the data is ready, and you should expect the publication on the Zeta Alpha blog real soon. And this is the top 10. So we're looking at papers published in 2023. And the top three, the gold, silver, and bronze medal, goes to Meta with their big commitment to open models.
I'm sure
Both in.
this will make someone very happy.
Again?
I'm sure this will make someone very happy to
Yes.
see.
Um, so there's gonna be a lot of statistics on analyzing the affiliations of those top 100 most cited papers. So we see big changes in the yearly impact ranking on the side of Google and Microsoft. Big uh, drop there in the number of papers in the top 100. On the other hand, big wins for Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon. So congratulations. And of course, this can be analyzed per country and geopolitically and all that, and we can all have nice chats about that over beers. So we're not just into organizing the scientific literature in AI, but also to discover and organize proprietary knowledge for high-tech companies. So basically, the Zeta Alpha platform is a enterprise IT ready platform with access rights control and configuration and scaling and connectors to popular data sources. And we provide state-of-the-art neural search on top of that, as well as classical keywords and filters, and a platform to build your agents on top of that. So if you're interested in RAG on your private data, do give us a call. So let's dive into the papers of October 2024, and let's go pretty quickly. So we have selected 10. Dinos, you want to say something about the selection?
Right. So yeah, let's just have an overview of the fields that we kind of focused on. Of course, we're a neural search company, so we have a few of our favorite IR picks from the month. There are also some papers on like the programming every example, which is mostly on the pre-training and data collection annotation side. We have some self-correction reinforcement learning inspired papers from the O1 release. And then a lot of papers on multimodality, image and video generation, and even some in the 3D space and planning. So let's jump into them.
Nice, making text embedders few-shot learners.
Right. So this paper is from BAAI. It's a model called BGENICL, which stands for their BGE series that does in-context learning and uses in-context learning for embeddings. This model has been out there for a while now, and we just got this technical report on how they trained it. And it's been pretty consistently on the top one or two of both MTEB and Beer. So what is special about this model is that it uses few shot examples, which contain some instruction or description of the task, and then a query and a result or a response, passage, class, or whatever classification, clustering, or what other tasks you want to do as part of retrieval. So what they do is training time, they use the batches to naturally construct these instructions as few short examples for the model. And this helps the model really understand that now I'm performing a retrieval task. And then at inference, yeah, it's obviously just provide a few short examples of the task that you're interested in. And hopefully this would steer the model into performing better or in creating an embedding that's more useful for the task.
Yeah, and the results kind of prove that this is a good idea, right?
Yeah, so it's a really strong model. At the time of the release, I think was the number one. They describe a few tricks that they needed to get right. I remember the grid paper said that in-context learning simply out of the box doesn't work. So for them, they had to do some tricks like have some sort of curriculum learning where you also vary the number of examples. So it's not only relying on the examples and also how they create these batches or how they use these featured examples. But overall, they produced this very strong model, which they also open sourced.
Great. So the second paper in our selection, Promptriever, instruction-trained retrievers can be prompted like language models, from a combination of people from Nomic and I think Princeton or Cornell, I'm not sure. They take this approach of in-context learning a bit further. So basically, they say, well, we need to increase the capability at query time and at indexing time to follow instance level instructions. So not just task-oriented instructions, like you're answering a question about this document, or you're finding a counter argument for this statement, but actually instructions based on the content of the document or the query. And they say that basically, if you don't do this kind of instruction tuning, LLMs, when specialized to produce embeddings, kind of lose their whole instruction following capability. And so they built this new data set based on MS Marco, where they enrich every training pair with instance level instructions. And these are the type of instructions which kind of clarify what relevant documents would look like. So they're not just saying giving a web search query retrieve relevant passages, but also add relevant documents are not co-directed and created before 2022. And how do you get these instructions? Well, by actually doing this two-step process where they kind of mine hard negatives and then ask a language model to create an instruction about what distinguishes the hard negatives from the positives. So yeah, that creates additional kind of instance level instructions, and they show that this does quite well when compared to RepLlama. So these are some of the BR data sets, and they have a pretty competitive improvement there. So let's go to the third one, also in the retrieval space. Contextual document embeddings. Sounds like a very clear, authoritative, end-it-all paper on contextual document embeddings. Well, it's actually a more kind of experimental idea related to the previous two papers. So contextual document embedding kind of tries to change the embedding of documents and queries based on knowledge about the other documents in the collection. So it has obviously some relationship to classical IR techniques like pseudo-relevance feedback, and also a little bit to hard negative mining, because you're kind of trying to contrastively distinguish relevant and non-relevant documents, or feed information from the other documents in the search results into your query refinement. But basically what they do here is they find a bunch of documents which are similar, and then they concatenate them and feed them into the embedding model at the same time. And then basically the target document or target query is embedded in the light of those other documents. And again, some pretty nice experimental improvements. So check out contextual document embeddings. Number 4.
All right, so next we have this very interesting paper called Programming Every Example to Lift the Pre-training Data Quality Like Experts at Scale. So this paper is quite interesting because it tackles the problem of having to filter and basically come up with rules on how to process your data to build a pre-training corpus. And in my mind, it's kind of a logical next step because we've seen language models being used as a filtering, so just to drop data, but they're taking it a step further and say we can use these small large language models. So I think they're focusing mostly on stuff that can run cheaply, so not no bigger than 1 billion parameters, and use these models to kind of identify problems and issues with text in the pre-training corpus and fix it. So they propose this pipeline where first they train a model to do this task of identifying issues and suggesting fixes, and then they activate and operate on the corpus on a document or a chunk level. So, for example, the scope for this project was to just have some functions like keep a document or remove a document, and then on the chunk level, probably rewrite something or drop the line completely or keep it as is. And so once they train a model to do this, they pass it through the entire corpus. And in their experiments, they show that this is actually quite effective. So compared to some other baselines, both in using the entire corpus. So on the next slide, you can use the raw corpus as a baseline, but you can also use some more traditional rule-based or even more complex model-based approaches to detect which documents or chunks need to be filtered. Can you go to the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for example, there are rules that were used from Gopher or FineWeb, and they show that their document level or even chunk level editing works better. But also from more modern, they are strictly bidding everything in both efficiency. So these models seem to be getting the performance faster at an earlier phase in the training. But what is interesting, again, in the next animation, they show this performance and both at the same time performance and training improval when training a model from scratch on these refined data sets. Like this works both for FineWeb and OpenWeb Math, so a model that is a more general purpose or just a math specialist, and they see that they can have even 30 times fewer flops and a performance increase of up to 6%. So this is a really strong and interesting approach.
Right. So we're getting towards the end of the hour, probably going to go a few minutes over. We're going to be recording this, so don't worry if you have to drop off. So let's shout out some of the other papers in our top 10. Training language models to self-correct via reinforcement learning is a cool paper from Google DeepMind, where they kind of work on this more modern idea that if you use more tokens during inference, you can get better performance, like in the O1 OpenAI model. And basically, the sort of naive idea is that you have an output of the LLM to, for example, answer to your question, and then you just ask the model to self-correct. But obviously, we've all tried this with GPT. It can go wrong, right? The model apologizes and makes another mistake or actually undoes something that was correct. So the sort of base model with self-correction prompting tends to lead to performance degradation, actually. There are a couple of models like STAR and supervised fine-tuning based models that were done in previous work, but they didn't really conclusively improve. So here in this paper, they introduced this approach called SCORE, which is a multi-stage reinforcement learning framework where basically the model self-generates the training data for its training a reward model and then doing a two-step approach, basically correcting the with the aim of having the optimal ultimate output. And this yields indeed a much better way to self-correct. MIO.
Right. So MIO stands for multimodal input and output, and in general, they position this as a foundation model that handles everything multimodal wise in a single embedding space and vocabulary. So their goal here is to unify modalities such as text, voice, images, and video. And they're claiming to be the first open source model that does this in an interleaved way. It's not actually open source, I found, but they promised that it will soon be. So their main approach here is to do this very extensive training pipeline where they have 4 stages. First is to kind of align the different modalities and the encoders so they all work together. Next is to kind of teach the model to use them interchangeably. And then they seem to be focusing quite a lot on speech. And as we'll see later, there's a reason for that. And then as a final cherry on the top is some fine tuning on specific data sets that they will be benchmarking on later on. What I found interesting about this paper is how they treat the modalities. Basically for things like vision and speech, each encoder pretty much takes the input and does some discretization. So it takes the full input and makes a token out of it, which is used normally in the vocabulary of the model. So it's not just projecting it into the same space, but it finds a way to move this into a discrete space. Yeah, and so they benchmark on some tasks such as captioning or question answering on images, as well as text-to-speech or video understanding. So as they show in the results, this is a really strong approach. So for example, it doesn't beat everything, but obviously it has to be on a trade-off. So for example, for image tasks, they seem to be performing really strongly, being very competitive on the top. I found this model also to be very strong in terms of visual question answering, but there seems to be some problem with speech, which is also, I guess, why they focus so much on making it better. So it does really well on text-to-speech, but on speech recognition, obviously, there's a really strong baseline from Whisper, so it doesn't do that well there. But on the flip side as well, in video understanding, it seems to be the state of the art, especially because they do this focus on interleaving the data, and it's native to the model that text and image go together in one space.
All right, so there's a couple other multimodal models which have just been launched. EMU3 from BAAI, OmniGen, also from BAAI, and MM1.5 from Apple.
Yeah, they shared their findings, not models, but findings from training all these multimodal models. So cool read for sure.
Great. I love that Apple is becoming a little bit more eager to publish and more open about what they're doing. I think it will benefit them in the long run. Like it has for Meta, with not just gold, silver, and bronze medals in the most cited papers, but also a lot of cool product-oriented models like this one.
So this one is Imagine Yourself, and the main selling point is it's a tuning-free image generation model. So the typical approach to create these personalized outputs is to train something like a LoRa on some person's features.
Products would they build with this?
I wonder. But yeah, this model kind of bypasses that and says that it's all going to be based on prompting, and it's going to be a tuning-free alternative where you steer the model to do what you want it to do. And there are 3 pillars on this, on how to evaluate it, is the visual appeal. So of course, it still has to be a good image. But 2 very difficult problems in this domain is usually identity preservation. So you still want the user to look, or the image to look like the user, and to actually do what the user requested. So in the comparisons that they do with the state of the art, they actually show that this approach, just from the strength of the text encoding and language model process under the underlying language model, it leads to some significant win rates in human evaluation. So if you go to the next one, I think we show basically that at least in control-based models, in adapter-based models, it's a strong win for this model. And then in the difficult domain of identity preservation, they do a trick, which I'll share in a bit, which leads them to a marginal win there. And the source is none other than synthetic data. So they have a huge data set of just pictures of people, and the trick to get it to create this similar visual pairs is to just prompt a model to create a caption of what the image is for, and then try as many times as you need to create these similarly looking pictures.
I think there was a little bit of a scandal in the terms of use of the new glasses from Meta, and I wonder what they want to use those images for. All right, let's race through the remaining papers. This is not actually in the top 10, but I think you wanted to just shout it out.
Yeah, this is kind of the opposite approach. So this one actually does a lot of fine tuning to create these personalized language models. So definitely a cool read.
So LLMs plus persona plug is personalized LLMs. Um, Moshi released their speech end-to-end speech model, quite a stunning demo that they released just before the summer. This is the companion paper, Moshi, a speech text foundation model for real-time dialogue. They also released the code, fully open source. And you can basically pip install it on your own laptop and run a completely intelligent agent with end-to-end speech processing. The cool thing about Moshi is that it's very fast, so there's almost no latency, and it does the understanding and the generation and its kind of inner monologue to create the answers in separate work streams, so that it can handle interruptions and kind of overlapping dialogue and everything. Check out Moshi from QTI in Paris. Then number 9 is Lava 3D.
Right. So it's a kind of the simple approach where we have Lava in the 2D space, kind of building on top of Llama. So a common problem is for these models that you want to also encode the three-dimensional features, and it's really challenging to get it right. So this paper they call it a simple way to add language multimodal models some 3D awareness. And what they do is pretty smart, actually. They take some multi-view images and depth maps. They encode them to get position embeddings in the 3D space. And then by combining them with the 2D image patches, they basically use this 3D patch as another modality that the model can understand and combine with the image. And this leads to great results on both 3D tasks, but also maintaining performance in the 2D tasks.
All right, so we've come to our last paper. So this is more kind of a critical paper if you're interested in whether the recently launched O1 model from OpenAI is the end of traditional planning software, and whether AI agents can sort of overtake the whole area of reasoning and planning. These guys have evaluated O1 on a leading benchmark in the planning area called PlanBench, and their conclusion is LLMs still cannot plan. And O1 is kind of a big jump, but if you look at the orange dotted line, that is actually a benchmark of a some more traditional planning approach for this benchmark, and yeah, it's not even close yet. What is a big jump, though, is the cost factor, because in fact, if you go from, let's say, GPT-4o to O1 preview, it becomes a stunning 100 times as expensive. So beware what you want to plan for. Plan your budget wisely. So this brings us to the end of our show. Just a shout out for some open source packages if your budget is limited, but your appetite for new stuff is great. Crawl for AI, a open source LLM friendly web crawler. ScreenPipe, allowing your LLMs to work with recordings of your screen and mic. EXO, which allows you to experiment with at home with smaller devices to run AI clusters. Of course, Llama Stack from OpenAI has been getting quite some buzz with all the tools around Llama. And one other system which is picking up steam is Storm from Stanford, which is a system which researches a topic and generates a Wikipedia-style full-length report or a podcast, maybe like NotebookLM that we started with. And if you have nothing better to do over the weekend, this paper didn't make it onto the top 10 list, but it's quite an innovative and interesting new architecture approach in the sort of neural network architecture space. Hyperconnections from a team at ByteDance and others um, basically makes a new variation on the theme of residual connections, which has kind of propelled the deep learning to great heights, both in ResNet and in transformers. So residual connections obviously are there to make kind of the problems with gradients across the different layers more manageable and to smoothen the training process. These guys have invented a new type of sort of residual connection architecture they call hyperconnections, and prove experimentally on the Olmo model that it actually does quite well. So check it out. And that's it for this Trends in AI show for October. Thanks for joining us online. Next month, on the 8th of November, we're going to be hosting the next show. And that's going to be at the same time, maybe live from Amsterdam or San Francisco, who knows. And if you're interested to check out the top 10 from today, you can quickly scan this QR code and have the list open for you in the Zeta Alpha platform. And as always, we're closing with enjoy discovery.
Enjoy discovery. Thanks for joining.
And have a great weekend. Bye-bye.